So you're not allowed to have apprentice if you're not a master carpenter, which means you actually learn how to train your apprentice properly, how to deal with them, actually how it's a very, very big part of it. So in the end, you actually have an exam where they have some of the first year's apprentice, and then they send them to you, and then you have actually like 3 or 4 people, and they actually judge you and watch you how you deal and how you actually teach the apprentice. And then we see like what's your behavior, how do you talk with them. It's just like if you have more like an arrogant talking, if you just not discriminating, but if you just you really the goal should be that you actually really teach them how to do it.
To be able to teach them. We're definitely missing that over here.
Yeah.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the Build Insite Podcast. My name is Luke and we are live from the Build Insite Adelaide studio. I have an incredible guest in studio with me, Daniel Jakobs. Some people better know Dan as Airboss Dan, specially flown over from Sydney just to be on the podcast.
It's a pleasure.
Awesome to have you in the studio, mate. I do tell a little bit of a white lie there. I can't say that Dan flew over just for it. I've just managed to snag him. He's over in Adelaide for a couple of days doing some pro Clima training with the team from Clima. So I couldn't resist the opportunity to get you in, mate. Pleasure to have you in.
Oh, it's a great fun to be here and finally to be in here. And it's actually a very cozy place you got here.
It is, mate. It is. It sort of had this little space up here, just sort of collecting a bit of dust and wondering what do we do with it. So podcast studio was it. Well, I guess maybe that's a good little lead into give us a bit of your background, Dan. Where have you come from? Because the listeners may be able to tell you've got a bit of an accent that doesn't quite sound Australian.
No, as you can hear, I don't have a Bavarian accent, but I'm from actually Bavaria. I'm from Munich originally. Born near Munich, Dachau. Which doesn't actually matter, but I just said it. And yes, so I went to school normally, and funny enough is I never planned to be a chippy. So I actually always wanted to be a pilot.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Even knowing that I'm actually not the right character for a pilot, because as a pilot you really have to be absolutely consistent, and you can't have any like up and downs. You always have to be 100% concentrated and multitasking, so. But this is what I wanted to be as a child, and even when I was like mid-20s, I always thought, I want to be a pilot.
Yep.
And but at some point I had to do something, so I did a whole year with different internships. So I did one at Carpentry, goldsmith, and funny enough is also with goldsmith, you need to be so patient because you just file the ring for hours and hours the same spot.
Yep.
I'm not patient.
So what's a goldsmith? That's like a jewelry maker, is it?
Jewelry maker, yes.
Gotcha.
So I made 2 rings. One in this case was earrings for my mom as a present, and just a silver ring for myself.
Yep.
But I spent just days and days just sanding.
Do you still have it?
No, I lost it like ages ago, and I was very disappointed. I actually think someone stole it, but that's even more disappointing.
Yeah. For sure.
And I was working in a bakery also, like a proper artisan bakery.
Yep.
Getting up at 2 a.m. in the morning and stuff, so really all the way in. Because the bakery normally opens in Germany at 6 a.m. I don't know how it is here in Australia. Yeah.
Maybe a little bit later than that. Yeah. Used to be, I grew up out in the country a little bit further. A lot of the country bakeries open sort of around that sort of 6:30, 7 a.m. Yeah. In the city, man, it's bloody, most places down here don't open until 8 a.m.
Yeah, but most places we can't call a bakery anymore.
True. It's a cafe.
Yeah, it's a cafe or whatever it is. So even in Germany, artisan bakeries are getting rare because like labor gets getting more expensive, energy price getting more expensive. So they just have the bread and then just put it in the oven and then they sell it.
Yep.
And did lots of other trades also, but the chippy one stick with me a little bit. And at some point I had to start an apprenticeship. I was already 17. And I couldn't find anything as a car mechanic. I couldn't find anything as an it's actually an apprenticeship in Germany for aeronautics mechanic.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I said, okay, go do carpentry. And I didn't like it much, but I always have been a bit perfectionistic. And if you trigger me, and if you have people really show me things, and really if they get me excited, then I actually start to get into it. That's how went step by step by step. And just an example, like what's interesting is when we have timber, or when we install timber outside of a construction, we actually try to install it upright on the same direction how the tree grew.
Okay. Yep.
because it means it's more water repellent. I couldn't tell you if there's any science behind it.
Yep.
But it's kind of old knowledge.
Sounds good in theory. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so all the stuff. So I always was interested if someone tells me the whole story. And that's how I got into step by step by step. So I was keep working. I still want to be a pilot, and I try to go to school, and I just then realized I'm not a school person. I always hated school.
Yeah.
Always. Okay, then I went back to the building site, and many years later I said, you know what, I want to be a master carpenter and construction engineer. So you apply to go back to school to be a master carpenter, to actually do the retrain.
Yep.
It's a 2-year full-time retrain. So just imagine you're 30 and you just have to stop working for 2 years. You go back to school. Because
we don't have... I know we touched briefly on this on the phone last night about what a master carpenter is, because we don't have that terminology here in Australia. No. It's a little bit different. What is a master carpenter?
So traditionally, you had the guilds, and most times parents just gave the kids to the guilds.
Yep.
So they took care of it. They just chased them through the apprenticeship, or they led them through the apprenticeship. And then the journeyman was the next part. So normally, because for you to do an apprenticeship, there's funny things we don't even, that's actually an interesting part, is these days we don't understand that the highest honor and you could have in the old days, like 1800s and before, is actually getting accepted by a guild or by a master carpenter.
Okay.
That they accept you as an apprentice.
Right.
Because in the old days, families haven't had a lot to eat. So actually having a few kids was a burden, specifically in cities.
Sure. Yep.
So the parents, the real best thing that could happen for them is if one of the guilds or master carpenter accepted one of the kids just to be a tradie.
Mm.
And of course you didn't get any money, and they treated you like shit, honestly.
Yep.
But on the end, when you made it, and most times something like an apprenticeship was up to 5 years, then you actually have been a made man. And then you went on a journeyman, because you had to prove yourself and you have to learn even more skills. And then when you came back, then you could call you a qualified carpenter.
Right.
And this is country based, like in Germany, like master carpenter is very, very, very old, hundreds of years old. And that was an important part too, because a master carpenter is important to secure the knowledge. You need to be a master carpenter before you are open a carpentry business. So you're not allowed to have a carpentry business if you're not a master carpenter.
If you're not a master carpenter. Is it, so we obviously have pretty basic here, just a 4-year carpentry apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Is there still an apprenticeship and then you become a master carpenter?
Yeah. So you have your 3 years apprenticeship.
3 years, yep.
First year is full-time school also.
Okay.
The whole year. So you have 4 weeks of internship in your future company.
Yep.
The rest is at school. And in school you have 2 days of practical, another day where you do actually like bricklaying and stuff, practical part, and the other 2 days are theory. And you actually learn your theory about the timber and all the background about timber. Actually, what's the structural, how do the cells look like from timber, does it grow, how is timber moving, all the other stuff, and all the mathematics. Because like as a carpenter, it's actually the smartest tradies are normally always carpenters, because they really have to know mathematics in and out.
Yep.
So the most powerful tool is actually a calculator as a carpenter, because you really can calculate easily every angle. That's what you normally do. And so that's why that's important. So you really learn the basics when you do your apprenticeship in the first year at school. You really learn your basics. And you're not allowed to work with power tools. So everything you build...
Just for the first year?
For the first year.
Yep.
In the first part of the second year, and then you have specifically power tools courses.
Right.
And you're allowed to, of course, use a skilly, even on the building side, because like a 55 millimeter depth skilly or 60 millimeters, it's not a big one, because a normal...
What's a skilly?
Skilly and saw?
Skilly and saw.
How do you say? I thought skilly is an Aussie saying.
No?
No? Handkreissäge?
Are you meaning a circular saw?
Circular saw, yeah.
Just a circular saw? Oh. A skilly and saw?
Yeah, skilly.
God, I hope there's not a few people cringing listening to this going, Luke, what do you mean you don't know what that is? I've never heard that before.
I might be wrong too, to be honest. I thought it's a skilly.
No, I've never heard that.
Oh, okay, maybe there are differences in Australia.
Circ saw? That's about how creative we get for
circ saw, yeah.
Abbreviations for stuff.
I thought it's a skilly.
There you go.
But like a small circ score. Circ score. I need some cheers. That's a small one we use on the roof when we run up and down when we, for the battens. But a normal skilling saw for us is actually like we cut like 130 millimeters of timber, 185.
Yep.
So I think you all heard about the
but it'll cut through 185 mil.
Yes.
In one go.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a
so
big
the saw blade is like roughly, you have to calculate 360 millimeters.
And that's a handheld power saw, not like a table mounted drop saw or anything. It's a handheld.
No.
Wow, that's a big saw.
And you cut it most times from 45 degrees also.
Yep.
So you have ridge beams.
Yep.
Which are sometimes 200 millimeters wide. So most times, a ridge beam, if you have a span, let's say 10 meters, 12 meters, and the span of the rafters, let's say 6-7 meters. The rafter itself is 100 by 200.
What do you build with over there? What species of timber? Spruce.
Yeah.
Okay.
You couldn't use pine.
Yep.
Pine for us is firewood.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have pine forests over there, or it's just spruce forests?
Yeah, pine. So pine we use for OSB boards, for low quality timber.
Yep.
Actually, most of the timber we export to Australia and the United States.
To the low quality countries.
Because about the regulations. The thing is kind of, for what we use it for, it's not strong enough.
Right.
Because you have a lot of knots. And technically when you have a knot in your timber, it's actually weakening the timber.
Mm-hmm.
And the way how spruce normally grows slower, and the orientation of the grain is different also.
Yep. Just jump back to the 12-meter ridge beam.
Yeah.
Is that one piece of timber, 12 meters long?
Yes. So it's a glue lamp.
Okay. Yeah. So that's not just one big spruce tree.
In the old days, yes. So what was quite normal when I started my apprenticeship, we actually had ridge beams, like 200 by 400.
Yep.
So we had two pieces of 200 by 200.
Yep.
And then we had to screw them together. So you have these massive drills. They're like that long. So you're really staying on top of the beam and you drill all the way through.
Drill through, yeah.
And you have some special connectors. So they're actually they look like a washer.
Yep.
So you have to imagine like an 80 millimeter washer. They have spikes on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Because then when you see when you have two pieces of timber and you glue them together or you screw them together, what's the biggest force in it? It's the shear force between the two layers.
Yep.
And that's why you had special washers. But special connectors, I would say.
Yeah.
And they actually deal with the shear force.
Wow, that's a big piece of timber, because we found just quite fascinating how we get excited about talking about timber. We got an old floor frame that we just pulled apart from a second story. We use, they used to use here a lot of Oregon to build. We don't use it anymore. You're not even allowed to reuse
timber,
it, unfortunately. It's beautiful timber. There was some, I think there were 190 by 50 floor bearers that came out. They were 8.5 meters long.
Nice.
Dead straight, no knots. It was ridiculous how straight these pieces of timber were.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we're not even allowed to use them. They're not. You can't structurally grade them, and because they're not graded they're not machine graded, they don't comply with current standards. We're not allowed to reuse them as structural timber.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it?
They make a bloody good table, though.
Yeah, you should definitely build something out of it. As long as you don't burn it or make something like...
Well, that particular project, they're actually being reused. There's a big study desk upstairs. That'll be the bench top. The pantry bench top, the TV unit bench top, some floating shelves in the kitchen. So the homeowner was quite excited to actually be able to repurpose a lot of it.
It's not much more fun one of the greatest fun is if you reuse timber.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But it's very frustrating because you really stuff up your tools.
Yes.
When you cut through all timber, specifically all the dusts, it's just blunting your saw blade immediately.
I thought you were going to say because they're full of nails.
And the nails, of course. So the funny thing is because I just maybe 1.5-2 years ago, I built a bed out of recycled eucalyptus, which came from a glebe shop. So the cheapies just threw out some roof rafters. So the building was 120 years old.
Yeah.
Heavy as the rafters. And I built a bed out of it. And if you just see the grain, you can imagine a tree must have been at least 300 or 400 years old.
Wow.
Because it's slow grown, eucalyptus, you could see it was a really big tree. And so the funny thing is, my bed is out of recycled timber, and it's eventually possible that the timber started growing before Australia was colonized.
Whoa.
It's a funny thought, so just to put time together with timber and construction.
It may be somehow the oldest bed in Australia.
Maybe, I don't know. Well, it's quite challenging because to work with it to get all the nails out. So I actually decided to get a victim blade, and I really was cutting through all the nails very, very, very slow.
Yep.
And I didn't break a single teeth. but it was a Marfell blade, so they're quite robust.
Yep.
And it's just just a square bed, but it doesn't look because the whole timber's twisted, but it looks actually perfectly square, but it's actually not square.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
there you go.
It's great fun. So never throw timber away.
Yeah.
So even if to go back to the ridge beams, even the massive offcuts, we always kept them because there's always something you can use it for.
Yep.
At worst, for nailing contests.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the Christmas party.
Yeah.
So when we had to learn how to cut with these machines, you can imagine like when you have like a 300 millimeter diameter or 360 millimeter, it's actually way more than that, diameter saw blade, you can adjust the rotation and the speed. So the bigger the saw blade is, the slower it rotates, of course. But you just have to imagine, sometimes you have that you jam the saw blade, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then you have this kickback. And the kickback on a bigger saw blade is significant harder and stronger than on a small blade.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So that's why it's important to really understand it and to really learn how to hold the saw.
Yeah.
What the perfect stand is, etc. So you really have to learn all the stuff.
Yeah. Yep. And it's something that you do learn, and I guess the more you use it, you kind of need it to scare you a few times, I think, to learn it. We've got one apprentice at the moment that every time he uses the saw, I don't know whether he actually listens to the podcast or not, so I'm not too fussed about saying it out loud, but you can hear it working away and it's jamming up and you just can't quite hold it straight. So there is a real technique to it, being able to just comfortably not even think about it and just cut straight.
No, the easiest technique is very often people when they cut and they look at the saw blade.
Yeah.
But normally you have the guideline in front of the saw blade, just focus on the guideline. Normally when you really focus on the guideline, then you can't stuff it up.
Yep.
Or use better saws, because interesting ones, you can't find saws with a wedge on the back. With the, how do you call it? The wedge on the back behind the saw blade.
Oh, to stop the jamming on the blade?
Yeah.
Yeah?
And it actually keeps it straight too.
Do you get that on a circular saw?
The Marfell ones, they have it all. And they actually have even, because sometimes you actually dive in, so they actually have this flip wedge on it. Yeah, so you actually can dive in, you move forward and click, the wedge comes out again. Yeah.
Wow, there you go.
Should send you some videos because, of course, I have muffle tools in Sydney.
Yeah.
So when you do the machinery course, because it's very important. And it's normally, it's quite normal because all roofs are prefabbed and pre-made. So you cut the whole roof structure at your factory or your warehouse or in your workshop, and then you transport them to the building site, and then you just play Lego. Right. That's the nicest part. So you spend around 1 to 2 days. So you spend with this big saws, you spend half a day just cutting one after one after one after one.
And that's in your, you do that off-site in a warehouse or a factory before you go?
Yes.
Right.
Because you don't want to stuff around, or you don't want to fuck around with heavy rafters where one rafter is 100.
Yeah.
Not 100 kilos, that's too much, but realistically 40, 50 kilos. Depends.
Well, if it's 12 metres long, it'd be more than that.
The beam's 12 meters long, but rafters normally always have been around 8 to 10 meters. The span, but then you had most times another 1.5 meters overhang.
For your tail overhang. Yeah.
And we always have, of course, dovetails. Yep. So you actually have a specific router for the dovetails. So you learn also how to calculate everything, because everything has to be pre-calculated. Because if you have to use your chainsaw on the building site, then you
that's really a no-no.
That's a no-no.
No. Do you use, obviously using timber that big, do you use a chainsaw a lot in the factory?
So you just use a chainsaw to lengthen everything up.
Yep.
But it's another topic, because these days you don't calculate by hand anymore, so you have your programs, but still they give you the cutting list, so all the rough cuts you do with the chainsaw. Yep. Most times you do use a battery saw anyway, the steel battery saws.
Gotcha.
And specifically for you, I think they're not allowed here in Australia, isn't it? Chainsaws inside. But the steel battery saw, for example, they're just bloody awesome because they have a very thin tip. So the most dangerous part of a chainsaw is the tip, of course. Yep. And if you don't know how to work with it and you just hit the raising teeth, then this is when you have got the kickback. And the battery one, specifically with this special sword, they're very safe to use on the roof or even more when you retrofit buildings, because it's pretty cool to cut things out. So the most important part is safety and how to work safe with tools. And that's why we have multiple, over a month actually, a course designed really how to work with these tools. Yep. Another part is, of course, building physics, just in the very, very basics. But building physics is an important part. And air tightness just started to get big in Germany back then, in the year 2000.
And this is in your apprenticeship?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
We're just talking about apprenticeship now.
Yeah.
The stuff and what I did as a master carpenter is what engineers are doing here.
Yeah, true.
So, so building physics, the basics. So because like in the 2000s, the worst building you could build in Germany was a timber construction house. It means you're poor, you can't afford anything better.
Right.
Because we had so many problems. Today in the training also, when I said like in the beginning, we had like a vapor blocker, like a polyethylene foil on the inside.
Yep.
There was one big problem also, because we introduced a lot of moisture through the PowerPoints. So maybe we should explain it properly. So today in the training I made a statement that we developed over time during different construction phases. And there was one part, if you vapor tight on the outside and if you vapor tight on the inside, everything's all right, which could work in theory, but at some point there's always moisture
getting through.
Specifically then when they started, which is silly, just cutting out PowerPoints and put the PowerPoint in and thought they're tight.
Yep.
So that's why I had many buildings just leaking. So that's why I said, okay, vapor permeable on the outside and it's vapor retardant as possible on the inside. And that's when later on the smart vapor control layer came in to really allow back diffusion.
Yeah.
So this was an important part too, and to really understand and how to connect it properly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so these are the main basics. And then when you finish, actually the exam is quite interesting too, because you have around 10 exams.
Okay.
And a lot of theory, but lots of mathematics. And the practical is a whole day one. So you have 4 different courses in one day. So you have to build stairs.
Yep.
Which is pretty cool. So you had 5 stairs, 2 you could use a machine tool, and 1 you had to do completely by hand. And in tolerance, we talk about 0.5 millimeter. So
yeah, wow.
If you would have 2 millimeter tolerance gap, normal stairs, we don't wedge them in what you do here in Australia.
Yep.
So they're really completely routed in with a 0.5 millimeter tolerance. So
yep. And no one would use MDF over there, would they?
Nah, of course not. It would be all beech, oak, stuff like this. Yeah.
Yep.
Hardwoods. And I built quite a few staircases, which is great fun, but it's definitely a lot of effort if you want to do it right.
Yeah, yeah.
It's definitely called the Champions League of Carpentry.
Yep.
Building stairs. And the funny thing is we built quite a lot of stairs in my company, and my the guy above me in my company, he was kind of a 0.1 millimeter guy. So that's actually where I learned from working accurate. And if I really just made the smallest dent in the timber, he didn't talk to me for days.
Oh no.
Yeah, because he was such a perfectionist. I think he damaged me for life in a positive way, because I'm same as perfectionist. So if you just ask my workmates in Sydney, it's not easy, because I always say, no, there's a better way how to do it, and there's a better way. I said, not Daniel, just leave it how it is.
Yep.
It's good enough.
Yep.
So then you work off-site because you gain experience. In the old days, it was in the old days that you had to work for at least 6 years before you can apply to go back to school to do a master carpenter.
Right.
But now you can actually go straight after. So even in my class, I had one guy who was just like, he worked for 1 year. And the idea is when you do a master carpenter, you bring your experience, and then based on your experience, then you build up to be a master carpenter.
Yep.
So it means you go back to school for another 2 years, full-time retrain. So you learn really, really in depth about building physics, how to calculate thermal bridges using, because we have energy passes in Germany too. So they're mandatory for buildings for 10 years now or so, plus minus. I'm not 100% sure. So an energy pass is actually that you do thermal calculations for your whole house, like windows, walls, and then you...
Who does the energy pass? Is this a part of being the builder? Oh, energy consultant does that.
Energy consultants.
Yep.
Because it has to be independent, because otherwise you as a builder go cheat to your own benefit.
Yep.
But technically it's relatively easy. But then you have an energy pass. They say, okay, this is your protected primary energy consumption a year. And then you get like on fridges, more or less the same, A to D, I think it is. And that's quite important when you sell houses, because the better your rating is,
sure.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And you get subsidies by the government, and you get points also when you do a blower test. So air tightness results, as an air exchange rate of 3, is mandatory in Germany, but
3
3 maximum, and 1.5 if you have a ventilation system.
Wow.
But no
That's
one
the
does
building
it.
code, 3.
Yeah, for quite a while.
Whew.
But that's European standard now.
Yep.
But no one does a blower door test. I haven't done a single blower door test in Germany in my life.
being that it's just everybody builds to that standard so well that you don't need to bother.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know what's the legal situation there, but that's my experience.
So you've never done one in how long? When would you have started? 20 years ago?
20 years, yeah.
Wow.
Interesting, huh?
Wow. How far, slight segue before you finish your story then, how far behind Australia, or how far behind Germany would Australia be?
We say normally Australia is roughly around 35 years behind Germany.
Oh.
New Zealand 25, US 15, 10, 15 with UK.
Okay.
Now the big question is, how do we determine it? And if you just see the 50-year history of Germany, like we went through 50 years of mistakes before we think now we really get it right now. So we barely have any problems. The only thing is where we still have some issues sometimes is with Windows, specifically the Windows sill.
Mm-hmm.
But
I need to jump in here for a minute, guys, to thank our sponsors, Backman Builders and Calorie Building. Without the support of these businesses, the Build Insite podcast wouldn't be possible. Take a moment to go and show some support for them so they can continue to support us, bringing you the Build Insite podcast.
We know it's durable over a long period of time. We're using a lot of wood fiber because wood fiber, just natural products, have just great properties. We had some in the beginning of the 2000s. I used a lot of polystyrene on the roof and PIR boards, and it's just disgusting to work with.
Yep.
And then there was just a shift in the year 2004, 5, 6. We just really switched to wood fiber, and since then we just used wood fiber on the roofs.
Yep.
Because
as in almost like a sheathing on the outside of the frame?
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
It's a sheeting on the outside of the frame. Most of them is 52 mil or 60 millimeters. So you can actually walk on it. The span, of course, has to be maximum 60 mil.
Yep.
600 millimeters.
600.
And you can walk on it. So you have insulation on the outside. You have thermal mass on the outside. You have good acoustics. So at the moment you sit here, you can actually hear the cars outside.
Yeah.
So with a good window and wood fiber insulation, you wouldn't even hear it.
Yep.
Not even close. And it's a very good summer performance. So like dense materials, they perform really, really well in summer if you have these changes between day and night. We call it a phase difference.
Yep.
So it means kind of if you have hot phases and then it cools down again, this means the latency in the product is pretty good, has a very good impact on the building physics and the quality of living on the inside of the building.
Wow. So this is back in 2004, 5, 6.
Yeah. PowerTex was pretty big back then, but doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe someone bought it. So when I'm back at the Bauer, I will see if they still exist or not. I hope, because they always have been very innovative.
Yep.
Yeah. So now it's mainly Styco and Cutex. Styco is quite broadly available in Australia now these days.
Yep.
And I hope they will get cheaper. And then I hope in a few years that someone will take 100 million in his hands and build a factory here in Australia.
Yeah.
So we don't have to import it anymore.
Yep. Yep.
So, yeah.
There we go.
So we jumped quite a few steps.
We did jump a few there.
Yeah.
Let's go back to eventually we'll get there.
Yes. So master carpentry.
Yep.
And so building physics. So you learn how to do the energy passes, lots of drawing. So I had to learn how to draw in 2 different programs. One an architectural drawing program, and the other one, which is even more important, is, as we talk about, CAD drawing. And also the other one is a timber construction program. So the one I used all the time was SEMA. And this is a 3D drawing program made from chippies for chippies. So you can really have absolute realistic drawing program. You have an absolute realistic animation of your house.
Yep.
So you just dismantle all different layers and you just have your timber construction.
Yep.
You can actually really look in 3D through your house and you see straight away, this connection up there doesn't make sense, and you can actually cut it in 3D. Like you would just put out your sable saw and you would cut it together.
Yeah, okay.
And it also transports it automatically in your material list straight away. So
so that from that model just exports into that's your timber takeoff.
Yeah.
Click of a button, off you go.
What's even better is, so you put your timber length in. So like, okay, I'm going to order only a 6 meter timber 4x2s. And then it does the timber optimization. Then you barely have any offcuts.
Wow.
We're talking about barely. So like when I built the hub in New Zealand, I was using 140 mil by 45. And I used 6 pallets of timber, also 6 packs of timber.
Yep.
The whole piece of offcut was maybe 1 meter by 1 meter by 500 millimeters
Out
high.
of 6 packs.
Yeah.
Wow.
Almost a whole bunch of offcuts. Because you won't believe how accurate you can
Yeah.
optimize it. It's unreal.
What do you do from that? Is that you then hand cut all that on site, or does this go to like a prefab factory?
Either or. So it means if you have, of course, the capacity that you have a Hundecker around, then you could just send off the file to the Hundecker and it cuts it for you completely.
What's a Hundecker?
Sorry. A Hundecker is a fully automated cutting, I think it's a 4-axer or 5-axer cutting tool. The company comes quite close from me where I come from in Germany. And it's specific for carpentry. So all big prefab companies have Hundeckers.
Yep.
Different types. And so even if you have very complicated connections, so even if you would have Japanese connections, they could actually route it out for you.
Wow.
Absolute accuracy. And so you could send it off, or even if you have a speed cut, which is just like it cuts in the right direction,
Yep.
you could fully automate it, do it for you, they label it for you so you know, because every piece of timber has its own number.
Sure. Yep.
And then you just build it.
Very good.
So the good thing is you can do it or you do it by yourself. And so what SEMA is actually is you just draw your footprint and then you draw your walls and you have kind of a wall automatic. So you just set your wall build up once.
Mm-hmm.
Say, okay, you have plasterboard on the inside, counter battens, and insulation battens, Intello, fully insulated, 4x2 studs, extesana on the outside, counter battens, purlins, and then FC sheet, whatever it is. You put it completely in.
Yep.
And then you just press enter and it just cuts everything together, even the connections to the roof. And then you just enter your roof build-up also. And then it cuts everything automatically together and you just press F11 and then you get the whole material list.
The magic button, F11.
And you could put your prices in too and then you would get the complete price list.
Wow.
And you get a packing list also straight away, because if you prefab in a company, you just try to penalize everything. So you have to figure out what the perfect panel size is.
Yep.
Where you have to hook it up. You can actually decide where the point of gravity is.
Yep.
It's here. Yeah.
Wow. There you go.
So
Interesting tech.
yeah, I'll try to get SEMA here to Australian market maybe mid next year.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think we're going to do it together with the Future Builder Society.
Yep.
And that we really have this drawing course, which is maybe a question for later when we talk today.
Sure.
But what's the future for Australia? So we should come back to that topic.
Absolutely.
Because I have a clear picture what I think what's absolutely needed. I have quite a clear picture where we should go in Australia.
I'm very interested to hear it.
But a positive picture, so
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. So you learn drawing on these programs. Then my favorite one, and you have to do, of course, hand drawings. Absolutely exact also. Most times detailed drawings from stairs and roofs, etc. Which pretty sure we all had to do it. And my absolute favorite, structural engineering. So you had to steel structural engineering, concrete, and timber structural engineering. Because they're all a bit different. So first 1.5 years manually, and then on the end, like you did a little bit digital also. But the final exam was a whole day manually. So you have to, on the end of the day, you have like 10 pages just with hand calculations. And I always hated it. And technically, structural engineering is not difficult because it's copy and paste. You really have to understand what you need. But I was never the type for it. Maybe too creative.
Yep.
But structural engineering was my hardest part. So for the exam, you had to start on the bottom plate, then your posts, mid-floor connection, then you went up, top plates, and rafter also.
Yep.
And you had to calculate all the way up because it all builds up. But technically you build from the top down, to be honest. So you start at the rafter and then you go down because you have snow loads, etc. So you really kind of where you are in Germany, you have different snow loads, dynamic loads, static loads, and
gotcha.
so on and so on. So yeah, that was one part of it. A very interesting part of being a master carpenter, also out of the training, is you have one part is you actually have a trainer license.
Right.
So you're not allowed to have apprentice if you're not a master carpenter, which means you actually learn how to train your apprentice properly, how to deal with them, actually how, that's a very, very big part of it. So on the end, you actually have an exam where they have some of the first year's apprentice, and then they send them to you, and then you have actually like 3 or 4 people, and they actually judge you and watch you how you deal and how you actually teach the apprentice. And then we see like, what's your behavior? How do you talk with them? It's just like if you have more like an arrogant talking, if you just, not discriminating, but if you just, you really, the goal should be that you actually really teach them how to do it.
To be able to teach them. We're definitely missing that over here.
Yeah. But a lot of good humans. So funny thing is like construction in Germany is much harsher than here. Like from person to person, like, because it's very old school still.
Yep.
So that's where we in Australia definitely progressive, and that's part of it. Also, like as a carpenter in Germany, you're also allowed to build your own scaffold. So you do a scaffolding license, because also technically, it's the main part is what you get taught is responsibility. So it means kind of we don't have building surveyors in Germany.
None at all.
No. You as a master carpenter, you're responsible for your work. If something goes wrong, and you have to stand up with it. So that's why you learn all the stuff. And same with scaffold. So if you would, for example, drive down the road and you see there's an unsafe scaffold, or something would happen and they could prove that you saw it and you didn't act, you would be kind of responsible. It barely doesn't happen, but that's what they teach us. But you do the scaffold license also, because normally as a small carpentry, it makes sense to have your own scaffolding because it makes you way more flexible. We're not talking about this heavy steel scaffolding. So we talk about, it's called a blitz, like a lightning scaffolding from Lyre, which is aluminium, super lightweight. So when you have a single story house, it takes them maybe 4 hours for the whole scaffold.
Gotcha.
And if you have to change something, so you don't need someone to come over, change it, sign it off, and you're not allowed to change anything.
Yeah, and it's all like a built structural scaffold, not a mobile scaffold on wheels.
No, it's a built structural one. So makes it way more flexible. So specifically, if you go to prefab, it's a very fundamental part also having good flexible scaffolding, because normally you build up the scaffold first before you lift everything in place.
Yep.
Because health and safety is always very important.
Mm-hmm.
So health and safety is a big part. Then accounting is a part too, but we just did the basics, and it wasn't good because even our teacher said like, you have to learn it because it's part of the program, but the best thing you can do is outsource it.
Yeah, okay.
Because it's not a good use of your time to do your accounting.
Yep.
And it's not. We should focus on what we're good at, and all the other stuff we're not good at, we should outsource.
Yep.
I had a feeling we did building history and so much more. So it was a lot. And of course practical also. So like high-end carpentry, then you really have very, very complicated connections.
Yep.
So for example, you just have to imagine there's a bottom plate where the rafters are the top plate, which is the bottom plate of the rafter.
Yep.
And now just imagine you have a bottom plate, so you need really, really good imagination, guys, now when you're listening. Just close your eyes. Imagine you have a bottom plate which is 100 by 100. And then the angle, the corner angle, they're not 90 degrees. It goes down to 60 degrees. So the angle, if you look from the top, is now 60 degrees.
Yep.
And now you started pitching the angle of the beams on the bottom, one to 30 degrees and the other one to 40 degrees. And the top edge, has to align perfectly. And you also need what do you call this connection?
A dovetail or a mortise joint.
A mortise joint. And it has to have some mortar joint too.
Wow.
Yeah, okay.
If anybody actually listening followed that, well done. Because I think I just got it and I'm sitting here watching Dan's creative hand movements and gestures.
I'm glad I didn't break my fingers. But that's the stuff where you have all like hip rafters, valley rafters with two different roof pitches and twisteds and stuff. Do we really need it? But it's good that you actually really...
It's ultimate craftsmanship.
It's really also craftsmanship.
Yeah, well, so when you master carpentry.
Yes, it is definitely master carpentry. The funny thing is when you draw the plans by hand, there's no tolerance. And you have like 6, 7, 8 different colors just because every surface has its own color.
Yep.
And then every roof part has its own color too. And it's getting crazy. I have to bring a few drawings through Australia because they look actually pretty cool.
So how old were you when you became a master carpenter?
29.
29.
As I started to go back to school when I was 29.
Yeah.
Because 2 years. So just imagine how much money you actually lose just being not at work for 2 years.
So you couldn't work in those 2 years. That was just being back at school to be a master carpenter.
Just on school holidays.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And most of them actually. So the normal reason why in Germany why you do a master carpenter, it's not like me because I'm like, oh, I don't want to work as a GP anymore. I just want to have more responsibility. As most of them have a company at home or they want to start their own company.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's so rare to get master carpenters here in Australia. Because normally there's a reason why you actually do your master carpenter, because you have a business at home or you want to start your own business.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I never planned on have my own business in Germany, funny enough.
Yeah. Did you progress to it? Did it happen?
Own business?
Yeah.
No, I never planned to.
Oh, you never did?
Nah.
Yep.
I didn't want to anyway, because I knew like in Germany, no. I never had the feeling I want to have my own business in Germany.
Yep.
As a carpenter. It's too hard.
Yep.
There's too many people who don't pay, and it's a weird mood at the moment.
Okay.
But there's a massive shortage on tradies at the moment.
Yep.
So like there are 250,000 professionals in Germany leaving the country at the moment, like high skilled professionals like me.
You said leaving the country.
Leaving the country.
Whoa. Okay.
So now we actually have some extra fines or fine taxes if you leave with the company the country.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, but that's a different topic.
We're
not getting politically here.
Maybe let's leave that for a later topic.
Yeah.
Where did you progress from, or how long were you a master carpenter before you stepped into your next career role?
I worked for another year as a master carpenter and straight away in a company.
Yeah.
But I didn't find the right company. But my ex-girlfriend in this time, she studied art in Munich, and she just finished tour, so we decided to travel. Where do you think we went? Good old Australia. So that was the first time when I came to Australia, 2013. And yeah, I definitely liked it. So we went to WA.
Yeah.
I was working in a truss factory, nailing wall frames together.
Yep.
As a master carpenter. And the only thing you do, and the only thing I did was like...
just move it.
And one by one.
Good use of your talent.
Oh, great use, yeah. And a few weeks later, I said, like, okay, you can move to the truss factory. So I was then working on a truss factory. It was definitely more interesting, but still, like, it's very monotone. And then, of course, there was a screen where you see your trusses. And I put my calculator out because I was just interested, because normally in a truss, when you have like a triangle truss, you put a packer in the middle.
Yep.
So you get the camber in it, because when it starts sagging, then the ceiling should be straight.
Mm-hmm.
And I just put my calculator out because I wanted to know if the triangle, if the 5 millimeters is part of the triangle and everything else. And the numbers didn't end up at all. So I asked my supervisor, and he got really upset with me. He says, "You're not here to think, you're here to work." I said, "I don't want to argue. I was just interested because I wanted to know what the builder of the program is."
Yeah.
Or maybe I just want to be a smartass. So maybe I would have deserved a hammer again back then.
Did they keep you on board?
Yeah, it was everything fine, because I always was hardworking.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and I left then.
Yeah. So that trip to Australia, was that you've been here since, or that was just a quick working trip and then you went back?
It was kind of work on holiday, so I was here for a year. So I was working in WA. Then I went up
North or south?
in Perth.
In Perth.
Yeah, Perth.
Yep.
And then we traveled all the way up the coast, and then I stayed over summer in Broome.
Yep.
Which is an interesting experience.
Magic spot.
Magic spot.
Did you like it?
I love it.
Yeah.
Broome is beautiful, specifically in summer, because there are no tourists. That was pretty cool. So we went them back, so just a few days Sydney, a few days Melbourne, then we went to New Zealand.
Yep.
And then I was working for a company, I think it was Smith & Sons. So we just have been fixing like one of these earthquakes damages, because it was not too long after the Canterbury quake. I think like 2 or 3 years after.
Yep.
I can't remember exactly. And the quality was just shocking. It was just like fixing, just patching up plasterboard in the corners, and you could see the mold behind. It's like, guys, we can't do that shit. And so I looked up for a new job, and I just thought, what should I Google? So I just Googled Passive House. In Christchurch it was. And I found a guy, also a German carpenter. And I just caught up with him for coffee at Macca's.
As you do.
And yeah, of course. And I was completely shocked, because I was like, he can't. Oh man, what's happening here? And I said, cool, you can start whenever you want. So I quit the other job, I started there. First day on the site, the ground floor was up. The yellow tongue was completely soaked in water, and had sheep wool under it.
Oh.
ground floor, and the external walls have been up too. So it was obviously, I think, the first or one of the first passive houses in the Southern Hemisphere. And on the first day, he just gave me his folder and said, "You're a master carpenter, you should know what to do." And I never saw him again.
Wow.
Yeah. So I started working there installing windows. I never installed a window in my life because it's an own business in Germany, but it wasn't luckily too difficult. Lucky me. And it was the first time when I worked with Proclaimer products on the other side of the world, because I was working with our products at least 10 years before.
Yeah.
And a very long and skinny Proclaimer rep came along. And I says, "Oh yeah, it's interesting what you're doing." Was Simon Cater, which he still works for us.
Yeah.
He's the oldest employee after the owner.
Okay.
And great guy, Simon Cater. He's like 196 and relatively skinny, and such a great guy. I really like him. And he just asked questions. I just explained him what to do because I really thought like he has no idea. And his answer was just, "I think you're the first one who actually can explain me what's happening here."
Oh wow!
And then I just explained him my background, and so I spent a few weeks, and I was exactly to the World Championship 2014.
Yep.
And everyone said, "Oh, Germany will win." And then we won, which was, and I knew in my hometown everyone is going out, party, all roads are blocked, and everyone having the best time, and I had to go straight to work.
Yeah, wow.
And I know, of course, then he ordered some special ceiling, and the roof trusses had to come on. So I organized everything like, okay, you have to come here on Monday morning, and the roof trusses, they will come like on Monday afternoon. So to just, I can't remember what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And plumber, you have to come right in between because we have few penetrations. So you have to do it here. Can you do it? Everything. So I had like 3 or 4 different trades lined up, so everything would work hand in hand because you need a crane. Yeah, it was the first experience that it won't work. So plumber didn't show up at all. He came 2 days later. No. The trusses. So it was an absolute nightmare. So it was my first experience to have actually proper responsibility in New Zealand. So it didn't work.
Everybody else let you down.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
So, of course, all the sheep wool was drowned in water. I can imagine the smell. And I thought, oh.
Fantastic.
Funny enough is, every building site or every company I worked in Australia and New Zealand, the first thing I had to do, I thought I had to do, was building trestles.
Right.
Because like even in a truss factory, everyone was throwing the timber on the floor. And I just said, "Mate, I'm not a monkey. I'm not working on the floor. So just put it on trestles so you don't have to bend over all the time and lift it up." So even in the big truss factories, I think I was building like 20, 30 trestles.
Yeah.
And rolling tables and all the other stuff, just to be more effective. So I always was this type, like I try to optimize everything. Even on the site in New Zealand or for myself also, I was building trestles first.
Yeah.
It's a fun fact.
Yeah.
But nice design ones, like have 2 pitches and then bird's mouth sometimes in it.
One side was 30 degrees, the other was 40.
Oh, not as much. No. 15 and 17 or so. Yes, so that was my experience in New Zealand. And then I went back to Germany because my ex-girlfriend wanted to continue studying.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a little bit kind of lost. I went back to my old company, but sometimes I throw in some German words because my brain has some hiccups. So irgendwie, I haven't had the feeling that I really arrived in Germany. And then 2 years later, she broke up for another dude. So I was very sad. On the same moment, I said, "Oh, Daniel, wait a moment. It means actually now you can do what you think you want to do." So I decided to open up for international work. So I wrote 1 CV. I went to the trade show in Stuttgart at this time. And I had 2. I went to Specs Screws because I had a chat with them before. But it didn't really work out. And I went to Clima. I said, "Hey, Lothar and Uwe, they have been number 1 and number 2. So Lothar Moll is the founder of Proclaimer. So he's the founder of the company over 30 years ago. And had another company 20 years before.
Mm-hmm.
Moll Building Ecological Products. So he had the first building ecological supermarket in Europe. So I went to Lothar and Uwe, which Uwe was the GM at the stage. He's retired now, but he worked for the company also 30 years. And it's another interesting story because these two is number 1, number 2 of Clima, and they're so different. Like Lothar is the engineer and has all the ideas and is an idea man, and Uwe is a businessman.
Okay.
And there couldn't be more
combination though.
Yes, and there couldn't be more different. I saw them yelling at each other too. That's why they complimented each other, because they respect each other even as different as they are. And that's the only reason why Clima is so successful.
Yeah.
Because they had these two different people. And I just went with them and said, yeah, I have an idea. I would like to work with you for you in Australia. And I said, yeah, you're exactly the idiot we have been waiting for, because we just want to start Australian business. It was 2016. And we need someone like you for the practical application, because, sorry to talk that much about Clima, but we always had the mindset that we're not sales driven, we're always education driven.
Yep.
So you can sell with the cheapest price and whatever it is, but you can't sell with the cheapest price because we have the best, and also production wise more of the pricier products on the market. So you can just sell with education, and people really understand, oh, there's actually value behind spending a bit more. And on the building side and on the house, we just talk about a few dollars a square meter with tapes and everything. So that's when I started. And I said, yeah, cool. Then I started. We wanted to open up the office in Sydney, but meanwhile we did build a training center in Auckland, which is a massive training center. And the idea was that I just go to Auckland to build a training center for a few weeks or 2 months. And 1.5 years later, I was still there building the place.
Oh, wow.
So, it's a massive effort, but it's a great place.
So when you started with Clima, did your career start with them, like you worked in Germany for a little while, or it was straight to Australia when you started working for New Zealand?
I worked in Germany for 3 months.
Yep.
So to know everyone, so whenever you start working for the company, they're really channeling you through the whole company.
Yep.
So you actually have to go to the accounting department, and you have to work for a half day in the accounting department and putting the numbers and stuff like this.
Right.
You
get to get the full experience.
Full experience, because they really want you to understand the full process.
Yeah, sure.
Because this is when you also appreciate other departments.
Absolutely.
And because every department, even if you don't see it or if you don't understand it, everyone has a role. Yep.
I think there's a relatable topic there for a lot of the audience listening, being builders. There's probably a lot of, I used to struggle with it back in the day, and I'm sure a lot of people do now, but when you get the on-site trades, they don't appreciate what goes on behind the scenes in the office, and they don't understand it. They see the builder or whoever leaving, like they'll come in for a quick chat in the morning, and then off they go, and they just think, oh, what are you doing? You bloody go back to watch TV or go shopping or whatever for the rest of the day. They just really don't appreciate actually the effort that goes in that you don't see.
Yes. The funny thing is when I was, because as a master carpenter, you designed to be a site manager, etc., and it was also the same. So as a master carpenter, you're a site manager and you organize everything while you're on site. So you work and be on site, but of course you're on the phone quite often. You try to organize because it's in your responsibility that the 10 guys are working for you, that they keep running.
Yep.
And I actually talk running because you have to go up and down, up and down, up and down. So it's not like the work speed is most times quite fast, specifically in retrofit, because when you open up the roof, you have to close it by night. Yeah. Because in retrofitting, most times, 9 out of 10 people live in this house.
Yep.
And even if they don't live in the house, constructions can't get wet. And it's an absolute no-go.
Yep.
It's a different topic again.
Yep.
But it means kind of you're responsible that everything goes ultra smooth. But even when you stay right next to them, you call like, oh, I have to organize the bin, I have to organize the crane, this and this and this. It's like, come on, what are you doing? Get off the phone, work.
One of the apprentices sent me a reel from Instagram the other day. It was when the boss comes on site, and all it was a video of just the boss walking around in the background on the phone the whole time. Oh, yeah. I felt very relatable to that lately. I rock up to go and chat about something. I could probably be there for 10, 15 minutes, achieve what I need to, and then I can go.
Yeah.
But by the time I get there, as soon as I get out the car, I'm on the phone for that long. I'm there 2 hours later, and I'm finally just achieving what I got there to do for 15 minutes.
Sometimes it's all good. It depends on the team, but sometimes even if you're busy, it's just good to get up the roof, help for half an hour.
Absolutely.
Full on, be with the team, and just actually, even if it's just dummy work, just do it. And because it's good for yourself also, because if you're just in front of your screen all the time. And
it's a good relief. It creates good team culture.
Yeah.
The rest of the guys can see, even though sometimes I feel like I'm getting in the way, but at least they can kind of see, well, actually, hang on, this guy's not hiding away from it. He's still here.
I think it's also for, as a boss, you also have, maybe it's a German thing, German and Japan, I would say, culture. It's also important to show leadership.
Yep.
And leadership is also to show your experience and your skills and not show off, so that actually like they see you working. So if you have someone really experienced, and it doesn't matter what trade it is, if you have someone in front of you who's really experienced, where you really see that's true knowledge and true experience, which I say is 30 years plus.
Yeah.
And you have someone like this around you, very, very experienced tradies, it has an impact, because that's I think what's missing in Australia the most, having really high level experienced people. When you see them, just how they hold the hammer, like my ex-boss, he was a lefty, but it doesn't matter what hand he used, he was with both hands faster nailing than I was with the right.
Yeah, right.
And that's just one example.
Yep.
But when you have some really high leveled experienced person in front of you, that's very important, because it has a positive impact.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what we all should try to achieve in our profession, that we really try to be the best and most professional person, because it always has a good impact on other people around you.
Yeah, yeah. What's the, otherwise you're just going to work to pass the time.
Yeah.
How is that interesting?
Yeah. But I think it's also real leadership, that you really just like with the presence by year, they see it like, oh, cool, I want to be like that guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it means
good
actually
role model leadership. Yeah.
Yeah, and it motivates, because it's actually something to look up to. I think that's important to have something like, because that's what's interesting. Maybe it's getting a bit philosophical now, but when you have with all the social media stuff, the thing what they look up to is kind of first not real anyway, but they're not related to. But if there's someone who's an absolute professional, self-confident, and you see like really, you have an absolute presence when you go on site, or when you present, whatever it is. It's something that people say, oh, that's pretty cool. Might be worthwhile to study or work hard or really learn a lot to achieve something like it.
Yep.
That's what I think. So, but the most important part is really that whatever we do is with heart, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly that.
Passion.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, that's how I ended up with Proclaimer here in Australia.
So you had the stint in New Zealand, building, what was it? Building a factory? What is building?
It was a training center in Auckland.
Oh, it was a training center.
So it's a massive training center. So we had 3 buildings inside.
Yep.
One is the office building, one is a passive house inside a warehouse with best practice. So the passive house is actually a show house, a showroom.
Okay.
And even in the walls, we have openings around windows just to show the wall build-up, roof build-up. And
what level was it finished at when it was a display? So it's just like there's no internal fit out. It's just to display.
There's a complete fit out, everything. So it's like a real house. The only thing which is not, there's no cladding on the outside, because of course we want to show off with our membranes. You want to show off the product, yep. There's nothing on the roof because we want to show off our product on the roof. On the inside, we just have a few windows where you can see the intello and everything else.
Gotcha.
But flooring, there's a beautiful cherrywood flooring, and it's just like one of this. That's how I think, and most of you guys must think I'm an absolute retard. But we arrived, the cherry flooring arrived, which of course had to be imported from Australia, which is getting harder and harder, what I heard.
Yeah.
And was 150 millimeters wide, and the length, they varied. Mm-hmm. And I just measured, and there was tolerance all the time, like 1, 2, 3 millimeter tolerance between the thickness, and like 1 millimeter is an absolute nightmare for me. That's way too much, specifically when we talk about flooring.
Well, if that's a finishing product, 1 mil it's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. But nothing you can do in New Zealand. Yeah. So my idea was, okay, the only thing we can make it work if we bevel it.
Oh, okay. Right.
So if you put a bevel on, then you actually have a bit of tolerance.
You kind of hide it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like 130 square meters. I had my Erica luckily, so I had to bevel all 4 sides. So this even took 1.5 days. And then when I started, I said we want to have floor boxes in. So we got like these 8 metal floor boxes for PowerPoints and data.
Oh.
And I saw okay, Daniel again. So I cut it out. So the floor box, the thickness was 4 millimeters.
Yep.
And the thickness of a saw blade was 3 millimeters.
Oh, no.
So my plan was that the grain of the floor box fits perfectly to the grain of the flooring, which worked out, but it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
But I thought it's a show house, so it has to be absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
So I spent another 1.5 days. I still have some videos of this stuff, which I never showed because it's just sitting on my hard drive.
Yep.
Yeah, but this is always how I thought, like, if you show it for training purposes, it has to be perfect. And yeah, so we have the seminar house with all the ventilation systems and everything in it, and screens and projectors. And then there's kind of the workshop, but around the workshop, there are a lot of small models.
Yep.
Models and training walls. So you have completely like 5 meter long walls that are just hidden in other walls. So you just pull them out, and then you have a full training wall with windows and all the other stuff. So really I could just chuck in all my ideas I had, like a roof structure sitting on the wall which just pivots out and you can lift it up and down.
Yep.
So it's pretty cool because it's a really proper training center.
Yep. Do we have something like that over here?
No, not yet. It will come at some point.
Where's HQ? Sydney. Yeah.
That's where Jesse, Willie and I sit, and Will, and the whole brain is sitting in Sydney at the moment.
Yeah. All right, everybody. That concludes part 1 of our chat with Dan Jakobs, Airboss Dan. Tune in next week as we continue this incredible conversation and learn more about Dan's journey through building.
Let's cue the disclaimer. I need to let you know that myself and the Build Insite team are in no way, shape or form qualified to give you personal or specific business advice. We strongly encourage you seek out the use of professionals for products or when you are making personal or business decisions. Everything discussed during the Build Insite podcast is our own and the guest opinion and personal experience and is of a general nature only. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Catch you on the next one.